Welcome to the Work Done Right podcast, where we talk with industry professionals to discuss best practices in construction, manufacturing, and maintenance. I am your host, Wes Edmiston, Director of Product with Cumulus Digital Systems and 15-year construction industry veteran. Our guest today is Eveart Foster, who recently joined the Autodesk team as an integration subject matter expert, where he leverages his extensive background in enterprise technology implementation to advance the digital transformation for the construction industry. In his free time, Eveart also serves as Associate Board President at Working in the Schools, a Chicago-based nonprofit that provides mentorship to public school students as well as professional development to teachers. Eveart has been recognized as one of Building Design and Construction Magazine's 40 Under 40 and Chicago Crane's Business Magazine's 20 in Their 20s. Eveart, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Wes. Happy to be here.
Thanks. Hey, so real quick, I mean, that's quite a background that you have. You've definitely had a diverse experience with some of the companies you've worked with in the past. Whenever you and I first met, you were working within Built Worlds, a whole construction technologies and construction industry company focused on connecting the different inputs of the industry. Can you tell us a little bit about how it is that you got into the construction industry and some of the experiences you've had along the way?
Yeah, certainly. And thank you guys for having me on this. I'm very humbled and happy to be here. So I appreciate the time. How I got into the construction industry. So my background was that I went to school for mechanical engineering at Indiana State University. That was really focused on 3D engineering, 3D modeling, and components modeling. And when I graduated, I went into a manufacturing design engineer role in Indiana for a semi-trailer and dry freight trailer manufacturing company called Great Dane, where I leveraged a lot of 3D modeling skills, engineering practices, and project management to roll out a ton of manufactured semi-trailers. I had a roommate in college who was a construction management major who actually ended up getting a job at Pepper Construction several months before I did. And we maintained a strong relationship, and he would periodically send me information about what he was up to. And it looked really appealing to me. And then one day he sent me a short 2-minute video that kind of summarized what VDC was at the time, Virtual Design and Construction. And it looked really, really interesting. So long story short, I applied, and Pepper took a chance on me, and they hired me as a virtual construction engineer at the time. And I ended up starting, I think it was December or November 2015, in their role as a hybrid between a 3D modeling engineer and someone who could come in and step up for managing high-performance sustainability documentation. I ended up doing technical structure modeling, a little bit of pre-con estimating, and then I ultimately went into reality capture, and that blew my mind because I didn't know it existed. And there wasn't a lot of expertise internally at Pepper who could really scale it. So I had a great opportunity, a blue ocean opportunity to kind of own that area of Pepper's project delivery technology. And then within that, I naturally got exposed to more of the opportunities for technology to make an impact for construction by kind of meeting and networking internally at Pepper to see what people were up to and to see how I could potentially assist them in their operations. So that's how I got into the construction industry. And then every chance I got, I was continuously learning as an outsider without construction management degree or without traditional project management experience, what problems were facing the industry that could be met with technology. So that's where organically I started to transition into different roles that allowed me to be into construction technology implementation. So within my time at Pepper, I did reality capture, scanned the BIM, a little bit of MEP coordination, and a lot of discovery on how to enhance reality capture and progress documentation. So I was an early adopter with the Faro scanners. At that time, one of the co-founders of Struction Site, before Struction Site existed, Phil Lorenzo would help me out with analyzing point cloud data with his plugin called Rhythm. That's where me and him established a really good relationship. And then ultimately, when they launched Struction Site, I'm one of the early adopters. So we got to pilot test Struction Site in its infancy, and additionally pilot test all the other competitors at that time, which really got to expose me to the construction tech ecosystem. But long story short, left Pepper, went into software customer success management, product management, and then at Built Worlds, a high level understanding, 30,000 foot view of understanding the ENR 400's technology stack and what they needed from it. And then now here at Autodesk, leveraging that several years of experience with different technology and pain point understandings to integrate all the solutions I've ever seen. That's the goal. But that's a high level how I got to the construction industry.
That's quite the story. Honestly, just again, the level of diversity that you have in your background with the experiences for what you've done, it really, honestly, it's encouraging to hear that Autodesk is bringing in people like yourself that have that one, that actual field level practical experience, but also just, the work with software implementation and the body of knowledge that you have from your experience is excellent to hear. I know that one of the things that you are most passionate about is data, but largely because of what it is that you've seen with VDC and software implementation and development. Are there any areas in the construction industry where you think that we could be doing a better job of preparing data to be utilized through digitalizations and innovation?
Right. So obviously, there's a digital transformation naming convention that almost every stakeholder in the construction project delivery value chain identifies with. And where we could do better is planning out data after the project's completed and understanding the value that data holds long-term across all of your projects. What I mean by that is from the general contractor standpoint, we obviously have historical information on estimates, bids, anything to do with your supply chain, anything to do with your material pricing, your labor pricing, all that, so on and so forth. We have new data available about what's happening on the job site from reality capture, progress documentation, so on and so forth. What we don't have is historical data about how it correlates with itself. Meaning you have your pre-con department, you have your project management and execution, your superintendent's construction administration, then you have closeout. Historically, that data has never had a relationship to any of itself. It's just always existed in a silo. And that is ultimately what every single general contractor and technology solution provider is aiming to bridge the gap on, for lack of better words, is connecting information that has never talked to itself through either an API or through a custom integration to allow long-term data sets to teach you about what to recognize for your future projects, to teach you about how to improve your current projects, and then ultimately to show you where there's gaps that have not yet been filled from your project execution efficiency. What I mean by that is if you start to integrate all of this data, you will start to see trends, you will start to see correlations, and then you will start to predict what can happen next just by introducing data sets that's never existed. The type of data that we have in construction is a lot. As you know, there's easy data like CSV files and spreadsheets and anything that can be kind of uploaded to a cloud-based system. And then you have the hard data, the messy data that's hard to get as far as information that maybe is shared in an email or information that's shared on a phone call or information that's just discussed in a meeting that has a monumental impact on the project's success. That's data two that turns into either an RFI decision or a cost impact or a change order. Those decision processes, those need to be cataloged too, because that's the secret sauce of a successful project that is hard to train someone fresh out of college or fresh to the industry how to do again. That's where you have a lot of information that I think is going to be a differentiator between a GC who makes a profit and a GC who exists another 50 years from other GCs who do not. As far as specialty trades and other stakeholders on the construction project lifecycle, they have similar data sets that could correlate upwards and downwards from their contract. And then that's a whole other conversation about contract data downstream, meaning how many of your subcontracts have allowed your project to meet success from a percentage of profit, then how many of your upstream or your parent contracts have been successful in making your company money at the project level. So all of that data historically has not had the opportunity to exist in a very efficient way alongside itself. And that's, one of the reasons why I've stepped into this role at Autodesk is to start to integrate some of that data. We won't get all of it, at least not in the immediate future, but some of that data to start to make impacts at the industry level and not just at an individual project level.
I'd be interested to see correlations between, we'll say, the profitability of a project or its likelihood in order to end up on schedule versus the number of those change orders and emails, those discussions that occur, basically midstream in project or earlier on in the project, to see how that ends up affecting project lifecycle and decision, the ultimate results. That's so I imagine, is that something that you guys are probably not in the next year or so, but is that something that you're wanting to target in the long term as a way of just utilizing this data to better analyze and build projects?
Oh, definitely, for sure. Because it's interesting how I got this role, just to kind of segue into, where I'm at now. I was at Built Worlds for the last 18 months from a 30,000 foot view, looking at the industry and what's possible. So I was meeting with tech adoption leaders from like Ellis Don, Clayco, Suffolk, and really having intimate conversation with them around what the pain points are at their organization. So I've had a tremendous amount of knowledge and information given to me from the people in charge of writing checks to buy technology to fill gaps. And ultimately, they have similar roles: tech adoption leaders, innovation managers, CTOs, CIOs. And what they're all trying to accomplish is not necessarily more technology, but more understanding of their operations through technology and innovation. And their goal is to fill in gaps where you need an expert to come in. We all know that there's a labor shortage in construction from a manual labor standpoint, but there's actually a skilled management shortage approaching as well, with more people retiring, superintendents leaving. And that skilled management is so reliant upon understanding what to do in scenarios. So if you can start to understand why you made decisions in past scenarios and let that be augmented by technology, that is where their mindset is. That's where the industry is going, is to how do we offset some of these 30, 40-year brains into a system that can kind of augment those reactions and augment that project management. Where I think the opportunity I have now with Autodesk and what we're trying to do is we're trying to connect all these endpoints from pre-construction to closeout, so then you can have a database or a bank of knowledge about what happened on your past projects, current projects, and what could happen, and at least start to get it stored. That's step one, is store it into a centralized database for one project. And then once you have that one project from end to end on a centralized database, do it multiple times for multiple projects, and then do it with multiple stakeholders. So that's step two, is have your stakeholders on the same data set as you, so they don't have to do double data entry. Because what's happening is a general contractor will hire an administrative assistant, a project manager, a 2-year project engineer to do data entry. When the data comes to them from an email or from a cloud-based solution, they actually still have the task of either downloading the data or copying the data to their system of record, and then storing it there in their language and their file naming convention record, right? So that's just one office, one company. When you think about a construction project, there's maybe 30 offices doing the exact same thing just to cover themselves, for lack of better words, right? When you move to a cloud-based system, you allow multiple stakeholders to stop having to duplicate the same job that you're doing and charging the client the same overhead that you're charging the client. So that's the goal, is if you can centralize the data into one cloud area for multiple project stakeholders, you reduce the overhead of construction administration that multiple stakeholders are charging back to the client. So long term, once we get that as your step one, step two is we can learn from that information. I don't think that's going to happen in 2023 within my role, but I think, maybe by this decade, with the availability of different AI systems and machine learning, you can start to predict what would happen, as long as you have a historical database that's been centralized and can query itself, for lack of better words, to understand what's going to happen next. But that takes a lot of clean information to come in. That requires your data lake to be data streams, and that requires a a code of conduct, for lack of better words, on how data gets managed, cleaned, and deleted too.
Hey, real quick, this is Wes. I just wanted to let you know that if you have an idea for an episode topic or a great guest suggestion, we would love to hear from you. Just send us an email at workdoneright@cumulusds.com. Now, back to the show. We are in a position where it is that, you know, those senior level managers or even middle level managers, it's not just craft that are getting to the age where they're leaving the industry. There's a lot of knowledge within managing projects that is just leaving. And even, you know, a lot of people that I know that I've worked with in the past are actually getting to positions where they're actually leaving managing projects. You know, they're either going on to some of these other tech adoption leaders, which is great, but also, you know, getting into some of them into consulting, but just leaving the industry at large. So it's great to see that you guys are working toward building up not just, you know, the ability in order to deploy some of these other technologies and better utilize data there, but also building up a knowledge bank to help to better manage projects. That's really exciting to hear. I can't wait to see what you guys end up doing there.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why Autodesk is so appealing to me is, you know, over the last 18 months, I've been researching the Eveart 400's tech stack from pre-con to closeout, and you know, there's only a handful of solutions that can operate on that scale: Procore, Trimble, Autodesk I put as the top three. And then you have your ERP systems and your accounting and project finance systems that have to integrate with those construction administration platforms. But that's one of the reasons I joined. And I think one of the reasons why it really resonated in the interview process was that part of the interview process was for me to present on issues challenging the construction industry right now. And I presented a graphic that I created that kind of illustrates the disconnection of construction technology's information cycle. So you have pre-con, let's say there's estimating, scheduling, bid management, and then project modeling, right? Those 4 or 5 different areas of pre-construction. Then you go to project management, you have documentation and collaboration, you have RFIs, submittals, file sharing, right? And then you go into field technology, which you have tools, robotics, and equipment, systems that grab data from your tools in the field. And you have your whole entire suite of how do you manage the field. That's another technology stack. All these different technology stacks historically are different companies. Once you start to centralize that data into maybe one cloud platform, you have the ability to start to connect those different areas of technology's data into one platform. So that's just your first step. But what I presented was where we're at right now is there's only a certain amount of connectivity between pre-construction, project management, and field technology that can go to another company with easy access. Right? Not everything that you do inside your company for that one project can be easily accessed or control accessibility to an external stakeholder, either up or downstream. So that's what I presented as the construction industry's main pain point right now, which is requiring us to keep so many people involved in the data management, I would say, for the construction's life cycle, even afterwards.
We always have these lessons learned at the end of the project or at the end of whatever phase of construction it is. And we always end up having this debrief, this download, but it even remains siloed and we don't ever pass that on. So very similarly, we're doing the same thing with the data that we're collecting at the different phases of construction as well. And there's a serious opportunity in order to utilize this. You know, for all of the progress the industry has made towards digitalization, there is, I think we keep saying this, there's a long way still to go. What are some of the biggest barriers that you see that is preventing a lot of this digitalization and innovation from being adopted, and how can these barriers be overcome?
Well, the digital transformation that has been adopted, we'll start there, then we'll answer, you know, what the barriers are. I would say that for the technology that's working right now, and you look at certain categories like reality capture, right? It started off a couple of years ago. It's just an easier device than your phone to take images of the job site. Take and store and name images of the job site. Prior ways of storing images was you take your phone or you take a camera, walk the job site, and then at the end of the day, you upload it to a file, a folder on your desktop, and then you maybe put it into your company's folder record system of record, right? And then it transitioned to, well, a 360 camera is way better than an iPhone photo. It's almost 3D. So then that was an easy adoption, right? So we went from 2D cameras to 360s, right? And then from there we said, well, what if you could pin a 360 photo on the blueprint? And then boom, you have open space, you have structure site, you have reconstruct, you have hollow builder, you have all these plethora of reality capture solutions. Then it evolved into, well, we were taking all these images. What if we started to learn from these images? That's when you started to use machine learning to teach the camera's file record system how to recognize an object. That's when we're starting to see extreme advances in the digital transformation of what a job site looks like digitally. And I give that example because that is a point solution that evolved naturally by its utilization, right? It organically grew, and then now there's a bunch of venture capital accelerating its growth. But that worked as one area of project management that always existed in a way that has never, been challenged per se, but it's now evolved so much that every single job site probably has a 360 camera on it, no matter how much revenue the job site is going to generate. So the parts where there is a lack of digital transformation still is parts of project management that require approval or utilization for multiple levels of project management on a single project. What I mean by that is the more signatures you need to utilize a technology on your project or at your company, the harder it is going to be to adopt that solution. We look at 360 cameras, we're very, very easy because you don't need to leave your project to get approval to use it. You just expense $500, you expense $1,000 a month on subscription. You can find a way to make that without having to get anyone else's approval if you're a PM or even a project engineer in some cases. Someone fresh out of college, you can expense that if you need to. Anything else beyond that makes makes you have to go to your project executive or director or above to get approval on multiple signatures, and you have to do an ROI analysis. That's a longer adoption cycle. That's more people involved. That's planning to adopt it. That's a multi-month, multi-step process that could have a big impact, but ultimately is going to slow down the adoption curve for most of the stakeholders. And then that's where you get into areas of slow digital transformation between the end user and the person writing the check at your company. There's most of the time it's two different people, depending on how big of a check it is, because of systems and just normalcy. But the big digital transformation areas I see available will be around really leveraging the BIM model all the way to closeout, and not just pre-con estimating, or not just MVP coordination, but continuously having as many stakeholders as possible, leveraging a 3D model, preferably in the cloud, which doesn't require on-prem software, which doesn't require you to invest in a lot of hardware. That's where I see a big gap right now, is true utilization of BIM for coordination of every part of the project's data.
Thinking about that, and something that we've seen, we're actually trying to focus on a little bit better now, is building in these solutions earlier on in the project, right? So early in the life cycle, even in some instances pre-FID, we are working with companies in order to get their data ready, get their digitalization plan ready for what technologies they're going to be implementing through the different phases of construction. Do you think that's something that other companies should be looking at doing, that some of these GCs should be looking at doing, how it is that they can start this plan earlier so that by the time that you kind of get through that long life cycle of approvals and getting every signature required on the line, that you're not already missing the mark with deploying these innovative technologies on project?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Some projects can operate without the need for planning technology utilization on them. Mainly tenant improvement projects that are 2, 3, 6, 12 months, a couple $1 million here and there. We're talking about commercial construction, for example. You don't really have to come up with I don't want to call it a BIM execution plan because that's going to be your larger projects, but a technology implementation plan. You'll have your tech stack kind of evaluated. You'll have the costs evaluated. That'll be in your bid to the owner, and who's going to be at your company doing the work, doing the overhead to use that technology. There are more complex projects where that is necessary, and we're actually seeing it, You look at an example like the Hilti J-Bot, which is a robot that can go on a job site and do overhead installations, hanger installs. That actually has to be planned out through the pre-con department before you even break ground on a project. So you can't last minute decide to use that project, at least not right now, because of the sensitivity it has to the job site's environment, which requires the job site to pre-plan its utilization. From whoever's cleaning the floor that day to when the installs get actually put up by the JBot itself, that's just an example, is it has to be implemented into your MEP, not necessarily MEP coordination, but your BIM execution plan and how you plan on actually installing and performing labor, because in a way it's stepping in as a subcontractor that has to be scheduled on your Gantt chart and has to be thought out way in advance of its utilization to actually achieve its ROI that it's been promised to achieve. That's just one example. There's others that involve really robotics and anything that happens in the field. That technology has to be planned out in advance if you really want to make it your project achieve that ROI that's supposed to be achieved.
I'd actually never heard of the Hilti J bot, but that sounds like a really, honestly, really exciting and cool technology.
Yeah, you gotta look it up. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm going to after this call. So, to pivot the conversation away just a little bit, I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to talk about this. I recently saw on your LinkedIn profile that you have been appointed the president of the WITS organization, a nonprofit in Chicago. Could you tell me a little bit about how it is that you got involved in this and what the mission of the organization is?
So glad you asked that. Yes. So, like I said, I had a roommate who was a construction management major in college. He got me the job at Pepper Construction. Being that just full transparency, you probably see me on stage at a Built Worlds event. You probably see me in a conference room, so on and so forth. I'm probably one of two, if you see me there, Black people in the room. Just full transparency there. That's just how it is. And me and him, both being Black males from families that have never been in the construction industry, who were first timers, first generation construction management, construction technology personnel, we have to walk into a room with a certain level of confidence that's needed to make an impact, right? Whether it's, me faking my confidence or not, that's how we start off. And this is how it is. So he actually introduced me to a mentorship program at Pepper Construction. It was a workday mentorship program where they bus these kids from the west side of Chicago, very at-risk neighborhood. And for once a week, for an hour, these kids would read with us, a handful of Pepper Construction employees who wanted to volunteer. And for the first 10 minutes, we would do like some homework help. Then we do about 40 minutes of reading, dedicated reading, one-on-one with these kids. And then the last 10 minutes, we would like play a game or like so on and so forth. So we did that an hour a week, and we would do that from like November to May. And just me naturally wanting to get more involved, I had the opportunity to join the Associates Board of WITS. I think it was 2019. And I joined the Associates Board, and I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know what the Associates Board was. But I realized part of the scope of the Associates Board is to fundraise. And I was kind of terrified of that. And why? Because if you had known me several years ago, I didn't have the speaking capabilities I have now. I was very much introverted. I was very afraid of public speaking. I was very afraid of like asking people for things. And I was very to myself. And I took on the opportunity of the Associates Board to kind of break out of my shell and make myself uncomfortable by fundraising. I never asked anyone for anything. So I did my fundraising, and it was actually way easier than I thought. I ended up doubling what I was supposed to raise that year. And then I had the opportunity to represent the Associates Board on a strategic planning event with Boston Consulting Group to come up with a 5-year budget for the program, where I worked directly with their consultants and their advisors to come up with the budget. And I gave some feedback and gave some ideas that ultimately turned into me being appointed membership chair of the Associates Board. And within that 2-year term that I sat as membership chair, one of my goals and one of the goals that PCG suggested that we do is to really diversify the Associates Board to make it look more representative of the communities that we were serving. So I did that, and I brought a lot of different industries, different people, and different ethnicities into the Associates Board, which is about 42 people right now, to really pull in the capabilities of what the Chicagoland area has as far as professionals working in the city who want to make an impact. And then that ultimately, luckily I can say this now, in 2022, that allowed me to grow the Associates Board to a point where it was making, a lot of revenue, a lot of funds for the group. And I was fortunate enough to raise the most amount of money of the Associates Board last year, with 13% of the funds raised. I think I raised about $11,000. And that was just from me running full speed with the ability to fundraise. And then ultimately now, as of January of this year, I'm starting my 2-year term as president of the Associates Board, where I am basically in charge of the executive committee that runs the Associates Board. And part of my deliverables is to kind of encourage, teach, and really spearhead the fundraising efforts of all the Associates Board members, and also make sure that what we're raising is making an impact on the kids' lives, and trying to encourage as many people to volunteer and as many organizations in Chicagoland area to partner with the WITS Associates Board so we can do workday reading programs at more schools. And it's a great organization because the amount of people on the Associates Board that are top performers in their field, we have investment banking, we have healthcare, we have a whole bunch of different sectors, all coming in with their very best employees, their very best talent on the Associates Board. So we have some of the smartest people in the city on this board. And what I really like about it is, we have a limit on how many people can be on the board. So we actually drop some people off every year, just to keep some of the top fundraising people and the most energetic people on the board. So if I was listening to this, please reach out to me if you have anybody in mind. But yeah, I love working with WITS, and it's really helped my career out too, from public speaking, from, being able to push and be creative in what I think can make an impact. It's been ancillary to what I do in my professional life.
Honestly, you're clearly very passionate about this subject. I'm happy to hear that you are directing yourself toward a cause that is honestly so valuable. One of my wife's best friends, the maid of honor at my wedding, actually, is a public school teacher in the city of Chicago. And, there is so much need, honestly, just for mentorship, like you're saying, right? Some of that one-on-one attention, people showing that they care and having these kids really to give them the opportunity in order to learn, especially at a young age, right? Because that is the foundation of all of the education they have. But honestly, I'm just really blown away by the fact that you used to be introverted. I think we met about a year ago, and that is the furthest thing from Eveart, right? So good job, kudos to you.
That's like another why for WITS, is because I'm trying to position myself to be the person that I wish I had growing up. If I had someone in my life at their age that was actually able to, inform me beyond what my parents could at the time. I had great parents. That's a whole nother story. Amazing people, but they had limitations on how much they can inform me to prepare me for the work and professional life. But had I had someone to kind of mentor and nudge me and really give me some guidance, I think I would have been further along professionally than I am now. And I think it would have allowed me to walk into rooms with more confidence than what I had back in the day. But that's another reason I want to be there, is because I want to have myself be an example of what they could be, and to kind of desensitize them into coming into downtown Chicago. Because a lot of times this is the only time these kids make it downtown Chicago is for this program. So if they come downtown and they see another Black face in a downtown setting, they start to desensitize themselves to being in that same position. Whenever I was growing up, I didn't even know of anyone doing what I'm doing now. And when you obviously, you go to some of these conferences or events, I might be the only Black person you see there, full transparency. So being on stage at a construction event, being on a podcast, I'm trying my best to be seen, because it is going to make an impact where I don't have a direct contact to that person. But as long as my face and my voice is being heard, I think it's going to make an impact long term because it's desensitizing others to being in that same position.
For anybody that is in the Chicagoland area or that is interesting, how is it that people can look up this organization and support?
You can do workingintheschools.org or wits.org, I believe. I should have this. I'll send it to you. But if anything, add me on LinkedIn, Eveart. It's going to be in one of my links on there. It's an amazing organization. But Working in the Schools or WITS Chicago, if you Google that, there should only be one result.
To wrap this up, we have a few rapid fire questions to go over to, again, get to know Eveart the person, not necessarily Eveart the professional. So if you don't mind, Eveart, what is one word that best describes you?
Innovative.
What is your favorite quote?
If at first you don't succeed, try again.
What song do you listen to when you need to get motivated?
I listen to so much music, and a lot of the music I listen to it's not even in English. Maybe Beat It by Michael Jackson.
Where is the favorite place where you've traveled?
Bali, Indonesia.
Does pineapple go on pizza?
If there's barbecue sauce and chicken and bacon.
Fair enough. And if you could have dinner with any one person in the world, living or dead, who would it be?
Probably Barack Obama. Reason why is he wrote the book Audacity of Hope. In the last half of the book, he explained how he didn't like having to fundraise for his campaign and how it really pushed and evolved him. And that was actually the book I read right before I joined WITS, which made me feel like I should do it and fundraise for WITS. So it's all connected. And having that in the Chicagoland area definitely gives you an even higher level of connection. So that'd be a really good dinner. I honestly hope that one day you can get that dinner. I think if I will it, it'll happen. Well, hopefully Barack listens to this podcast and this gives you the opportunity in order to have that dinner. A pineapple pizza dinner. That's right. As long as there's barbecue sauce and chicken. Hey, Eveart. Again, great talking with you. Thank you very much for joining us on this show. I look forward to talking to you again here soon. Thank you. Appreciate you guys having me. I hope you have enjoyed listening to this episode of the Work Done Right podcast. Please help us out by subscribing and leaving us a review. And as always, our show notes are linked in this episode's description. Thank you for listening and see you next time.